Hey guys, welcome to episode 255 of Stand Up. Joining me today, senior writer from New York Magazine to talk about the split within the progressive movement, Eric Levitz, comedian, the best Trump impersonator, and one of the smartest guys I know, the always brilliant and hilarious J.L. Cauvin. I'm just Pete Dominic, so I'd like you to stand up with me right now. Hey guys, thank you very much for joining me here on Christmas Eve. If you are in fact listening on December 23rd when this episode of Stand Up dropped. I hope you're having a good Christmas week. I am. Been super busy this week and have met with a lot of listeners doing their birthday parties and an office party. Thank you to Desiree and Ryan out in California. Thank you to Don up in Canada for having me join their parties, and it was a lot of fun. And if anybody wants me to, basically, I think I'm doing crowd work or like moderating conversations. So if you have a group of people, a family gathering, or your office or something, I mean, this was listeners' ideas. I wasn't pitching this, but it's going so well. They're going so well. If you want to bring me in, let me know. Just email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com, because I'm having so much fun meeting all these people. I hate when they're over. And speaking of which, tonight, the stand-up community will gather, as we do every Thursday, even though it's Wednesday. But Thursdays at 8 is the regular day, but because tomorrow is Christmas Eve. Tonight at 8 p.m., join us. If you are a subscriber, you should be getting the email. If you're not, let me know. But just go to patreon.com/Pete Dominic and sign up right now, and you'll get the link to join us, usually 50 or 60, sometimes over that many people. And I don't know, wear your ugly sweaters, wear your Christmas sweaters, get dressed up in any kind of seasons, greetings, wrap yourself in lights, do whatever you want, show up naked. I don't care. I'll be happy as long as you're there. Hope to see you tonight at 8. Okay, what the hell happened last night? What happened yesterday? I'm out partying, I'm having virtual parties, I'm having a good time, and my phone starts getting texts. Oh my gosh, look what he did now. Trump pardoned a whole bunch of people, including cold-blooded murderers, and then also he vetoed the COVID relief bill. He vetoed it. And no, it's very confusing. He's saying he wants there to be more money, which is good, it's great. Nancy Pelosi is all for it. But the question is, what is the play? Why is he doing this? The president posted this video last night, and Nancy Pelosi responded immediately. Republicans repeatedly refused to say what amount the president wanted for direct checks, she tweeted. At last, the president has agreed to $2,000. Democrats are ready to bring this to the floor this week by unanimous consent. Let's do it. And let's get some reaction to this from the president. This announcement last night. Jared Yates Sexton, who everybody loved, who was on my guest on the show yesterday, definitely go listen to that. He tweeted, "Have to love a president trying to bribe a populace into supporting his haphazard, baseless coup attempt. I mean, we'll take the money, but man alive." Love that, Jared. One of the smartest political analysts out there, I think, is Chris Hayes from MSNBC, and he tweeted, "People should be clear on what happened. The number one reason there wasn't a deal sooner with a higher price tag was that Trump completely ignored the entirety of the negotiations. He's now pissed that McConnell acknowledged Biden's victory, and this is his revenge. The most stalwart opposition to the $2,000 checks is McConnell's own Senate caucus. This blows up McConnell's deal and screws Loeffler and Perdue, who have now been wrong-footed. Pelosi is right to call the bluff. Push as far as you can and force a showdown between Trump and McConnell, because ultimately that's a big battle that has to happen before this era ends." Matthew Gertz on Twitter. To sum it up, the president is terrifying his staffers by plotting a coup in the Oval Office meetings with conspiracy theorists. He's pardoning corrupt political allies and war criminals, and he's threatening a relief package for the pandemic that killed 3,100 Americans today. Jassy Han on Twitter. Perdue and Loeffler have been flexing the $600 in relief today. It'll be hella awkward if Trump nixes it and Georgians get squat. And yeah, so moments after the White House announced these pardons, the former Republican lawmakers and people tied to the Mueller probe, Trump went and announced that he doesn't want to sign the stimulus deal that his staff said he would sign. And he's demanded stimulus checks to be raised from $600 to $2,000 and claims he could stay in office. So that's what happened last night. And I think the bottom line, the most important part, is that this surprise announcement from the president could delay desperately needed aid for millions of Americans if Trump decides not to sign the package as it stands. And it also, oh, by the way, risks the government shutdown on December 28th as well. But let's get to those pardons, man. This was also huge news last night. President Trump handing them out like Christmas presents, apparently, he says. We've expected this pardon spree, but he issued 20 pardons and commutations. Convicted, I mean, just the worst villains of the Republican Party, like the worst white-collar, corrupt criminals. As bad as they are, he looks for the worst people who are so guilty, and he pardons them. Convicted former Republican representatives Duncan Hunter, Chris Collins, the first two the congressmen who endorsed Trump in 2016 election. Russia probe figures George Papadopoulos and Alex van der Zwaan, also among the wave of pardons and 5 commutations. 15 pardons and 5 commutations. Duncan Hunter pleaded guilty in 2019 to misusing campaign finance funds. He was set to begin serving an 11-month sentence next month, but now he's not. Chris Collins, he had been serving a 26-month sentence for making false statements to the FBI and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. He's out. George Papadopoulos is a former Trump campaign advisor. He pleaded guilty in 2017 to making false statements to the FBI about Russian contacts. This van der Zwaan character pled guilty in February 2018 to lying to FBI agents about his communications with former deputy Trump campaign manager Rick Gates and an unidentified individual who is believed to have ties to Russian intelligence. So he gets a pardon, too. He also granted clemency to former GOP Congressman Steve Stockman, who's a dirtbag. He'd been serving a 10-year sentence for misusing charitable funds. His sentence was commuted. And what about those military contractors? 4 military contractors involved in 2007 killings of more than a dozen Iraqi civilians in Baghdad. They were all serving long prison sentence. They all got pardons as well. My friend Glenn Kirshner tweeted about that. Trump pardoned the 4 Blackwater defendants who slaughtered 14 innocent unarmed Iraqis, injured 17 others. I consider these trials one of the proudest accomplishments of the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, fighting for justice for those Iraqi victims. Today, Trump killed justice. My friend, writer, and Iraq war combat veteran who's been on the show several times, Matt Gallagher, tweeted, "I'm not a lawyer, but I am someone who served in Iraq in 2007 and 2008 in the greater Baghdad and thus saw and dealt with the consequences of these motherfuckers' actions. This is a disgrace." Ryan Brown of CNN with a more straight-up headline. Today, President Trump granted full pardons to 4 former Blackwater security contractors who were found guilty of firing indiscriminately into a crowd, killing civilians in Iraq in 2007. It included, quote, women stepping off buses who were clutching only purses, elderly men with their hands in the air, and parents trying to shield young children. September 16th, 2007, Nisour Square, Nisour Square. Look it up. Paul Rieckhoff. Of course he pardoned them. President Mayhem doesn't like people who are captured by the enemy, but he loves murderous war criminals. And hashtag our enemies are celebrating. All right, so that is the reaction to some of the reaction, a few reactions to both the president turning down the COVID relief deal and the pardons. And now I want to play a couple things for you. One real quick one from the president making an ass of himself in that video last night. The president accidentally admits that he lost the election, and then, of course, he corrects it on the fly in a cringeworthy, awkward way, as usual.
And to send me a suitable bill, or else the next administration will have to deliver a COVID relief package, and maybe that administration will be me, and we will get it done.
And it's maybe not going to be. You know what? No questions. Thank you. Excuse me. I want to share this clip with you from MSNBC where Nicole Wallace, who is a former Republican, worked on the McCain-Palin campaign. Of course, she's now an anchor at MSNBC. She confronted Chris Christie. I'm not sure why he's on all the networks. I thought he was exclusive to ABC, that they always got the treat. But he's on Fox News and MSNBC, maybe CNN too. Anyway, Nicole Wallace confronted the former governor of New Jersey and Trump confidant Chris Christie about the motives behind his recent public break with the president. And I absolutely think this is worth this was great. I thought she did a great job, and I wanted to play the whole thing for you.
Governor Christie, let me just press back a little bit on you not being scared. I mean, it's my sense, and I know you said in an interview with Hugh Hewitt that you haven't ruled out a run in 2024. I don't remember you coming out and forcefully pushing back against Donald Trump's comments on the Access Hollywood tape. You didn't defend him, but you didn't withdraw your support. I didn't hear you after he called African nations bleep hole nations. I didn't hear you distance yourself from this president at any point until the target for his ire and lawlessness was the democracy you haven't ruled out leading in 4 years. Are you simply making a political calculation that you can clean the Trump stink off you faster than Marco Rubio or some of your other competitors?
No, not at all, Nicole. And in fact, at the end of it, I made a decision back in 2016 that the choice between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton was one where I was with Donald Trump. And I don't regret that choice. I still don't regret it today. I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton today if that choice were to be made. And so that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that, I evaluate these things one at a time. And you picked out places where I didn't speak out. And there have been any number of places where I have spoken out.
Well, I'm done hearing you speak out at all. I think you are shameless, a coward, and terrible. I really do. Chris Christie is going to go down, hopefully in history, as being someone who supported Donald Trump through all of the chaos. Oh, and he cherry-picked at times where he would criticize him. But, even for him or anybody to say, and I would still not have voted for Hillary. Really? After everything that Trump did? Come on, son. All right, let's stay with MSNBC, where my friend Ali Velshi unloaded on the Trump officials hiding behind the blind quotes while Trump is considering a coup. He went on a complete tear Monday night against the anonymous Trump White House officials who are apparently very worried about the president's actions to overturn the election, but aren't going to do more to speak up for it. Here's Velshi.
We must take him seriously when he tries this time, because if you read the manual on how to do a coup, this is exactly the stuff that you would be doing, holding meetings with influential supporters and elected officials, egging you on and telling you it can be done. Coups get real when legal and political options are exhausted. Trump is running out of options. He's considering a coup, and he has 30 days left to execute one. So no more blind quotes, no more silence. Now is the time to speak out against a man who's actually attempting to dismantle democracy to stay in power. You can't sort of be on the right side or sort of be on the wrong side of that. And it doesn't make you a Democrat or a Republican or an independent or a libertarian to speak out now. You're either on the side of democracy or you're not. He's not. So what side are you on?
Whoo, Ali Velshi, smoke him if you got him. I didn't even know why I used that phrase. I don't think that was the appropriate usage of that phrase right there. And I feel bad about it, but I'm not gonna edit it out. That went viral, that clip. That's a longer. It's like 4.5 minutes that he went off. I just included about a minute of it or so, but I absolutely recommend you watch the whole thing. So great. Great job, Ali Velshi. Loved that. Well, 30 more days of this maniac, and the president-elect Joe Biden addressed the cyber attacks yesterday at a press conference. I wanted to play a little bit of that for you. Here is the president-elect Joe Biden right now.
Against the U.S. companies, many of them, as well as federal agencies. And there's still so much we don't know, including the full scope of the breach or the extent of the damage it has caused. But we know this much. This attack constitutes a grave risk to our national security. It was carefully planned and carefully orchestrated. It was carried out by using sophisticated cyber tools. The attackers succeeded in catching the federal government off guard and unprepared. Foreign actors have been working in this breach since late last year, at least last year, setting the landscape to compromise our systems, scraping up sensitive information from our world-class tech sector and from private businesses and from United States government agencies. The truth is this: the Trump administration failed to prioritize cybersecurity. It did that from eliminating or downgrading cyber coordinators in both the White House and at the State Department, to firing the director of Cyberspace and Infrastructure Security Agency, to President Trump's irrational downplaying of the seriousness of this attack. Enough's enough. In an age when so much of our lives are conducted online, Cyber attacks must be treated as a serious threat by our leadership at the highest levels.
The president-elect Joe Biden also laughed at a Fox News reporter who asked him about his son, Hunter Biden, and he called him a one-horse pony. So this also happened. Here it is.
Yes. God, you're a one-horse pony. You're a one-horse pony. Thank you. I promise you, my Justice Department will be totally on its own, making its judgments about how they should judge. Thank you.
All right, now here's a few select COVID-related headlines that I want to share with you, and then we'll do the news dump and get to JL Cauvin and Eric Levitz, who are my guests today on Stand Up. The Associated Press is reporting it is officially the deadliest day. The Associated Press reporting this is the deadliest year in U.S. history, with deaths expected to top 3 million for the first time, due mainly to the coronavirus pandemic. Final mortality data for this year will not be available for months, but preliminary numbers suggest that the United States is on track to see more than 3.2 million deaths this year, or at least 400,000 more than 2019. All right, here's a happy COVID story. California nurse walked out of the hospital after an 8-month COVID-19 ordeal in California. She's a veteran ICU nurse whose job is to care for the most critically ill patients at her hospital in Long Beach, California. Her name is Merlin Palmbaum, and she was well aware of the deadly ravages COVID-19 can inflict on the human body. It's a great article. You can read it at Thomson Reuters by Steve Gorman. That's a happy COVID story. There you go. In France, if you're an anti-vaxxer, you might face public transportation ban. People who failed to get a COVID-19 vaccination could be banned from using public transport in France, according to a draft law, sparking some pretty angry protests from opposition politicians on Tuesday. That is from Agence France AFP. I don't think I pronounced that right. I'm not a French speaker. But I actually like that law. Sorry. You want to go to school here? You got to get a vaccine. You want to go to work here? You got to get a vaccine. You want to ride the bus, the subway? Sorry, you got to get vaccinated. That's I don't know if that's an extreme position. I don't know if you agree with that. I'm sure there are plenty of reasons to disagree with that, but your thoughts are always welcome. 2 cardinals close to the Pope have tested positive for COVID-19 a day after the Pope exchanged Christmas greetings with senior staff. Yeesh. You got to get more of that Jesus blood in the Vatican, because if you bathe in the blood of Christ, you're supposed to be immune, according to a lot of people I've seen at Trump rallies that actually talk to people on microphones and cameras. Dr. Deborah Birx announced that she would be retiring, and a lot of people are happy to, unfortunately, see her go. I don't know. That woman has done a lot of good in the world, but I think she really messed up, it would seem, when she went along with some of the president's worst ideas as a way to be able to kind of survive and do the right thing. She was, I think, always in a tough situation and probably was not a controversial person before Donald Trump. And I have a lot of compassion for her. And maybe I'm not as read in as others are on her, but I keep her in the light. I think she's done more good than she has bad. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you disagree with that one, too. And the final headline of COVID is, how are you doing? How's your COVID fatigue? You checking in with yourself, hopefully every day. Hopefully you're getting your vitamin N. Get out there and send those pictures to me. I'll post them in the daily email. You'll get that if you're a subscriber. But I know that a lot of people are struggling, hearing from a lot of you, talking with a lot of you. Hope to see you tonight. And we'll lighten it up with some holiday cheer. Should I bring eggnog to the hangout? I don't think so. I don't drink eggnog. I can't even believe I said that. Some of you are with me. I'm like, oh, I don't think so. All right, now let's get to the news dump, where each and every episode I go through a whole bunch of headlines that aren't directly political. They're not related to COVID, but they are important and probably getting undercovered. That is the news dump. And if you want to join me, by the way, I love having somebody else join me for the news dump. Last night, it was my mom and dad. Been talking to a couple of listeners about jumping in here and doing the news dump with me. Here it is.
They call them dumps, big, massive dumps.
Let's start tonight right here in my shed where I wish I could have a wood-burning stove, but I can't because it's really small, the shed, and that would be very dangerous. I thought that was true, and then I saw this headline: Wood burners triple harmful indoor air pollution, according to a new study. Wood burners triple the level of harmful pollution particles inside homes and should be sold with a health warning, say scientists, who would also advise they should not be used around elderly people or children. The tiny particles flood into the room when the burner doors are open for refueling, a study found. Furthermore, people who load in wood twice or more in an evening are exposed to pollution spikes 2 or 4 times higher than those who refuel once or not at all. So there are safe ways to do it, but you should be limiting those fires indoors, especially. I think the outdoor fire is a lot different in terms of what you may or may not breathe. But the study published in the journal Atmosphere analyzed data collected every few minutes from pollution monitors in people's homes and in total assessed 260 uses of wood burners. So be careful. I told you. Somebody encouraged me to just go ahead and do it, but I'm glad I didn't. Science, folks. Bloomberg Business Week headline: the work from home boom is here to stay. Get ready for pay cuts. White-collar workers are taking advantage of a newfound flexibility to leave expensive coastal cities, even as companies move to, quote, localize their pay. Interesting article. I wonder if you agree with that trend, if that's what you are seeing or wanting, and how can you make more money staying at home? Let me slip one political story in here. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, announced his selection to replace Kamala Harris in the U.S. Senate. It's the Secretary of State, Alex Padilla, who is a son of working-class immigrants, a Mexican-American, and will serve as the first Latino senator in the 170-year history of California. And I don't like it. I don't like it because I don't understand why the governor gets to appoint the senator. Why don't they have a special election in every state? I don't know what I'm missing. I have to ask some constitutional scholar about that. How is that fair? That's why I don't like it. Remains to be seen the reaction to Alex Padilla. We'll have days and weeks. It must have been a very hard choice for the governor of California there. A top business headline today: during crucial holiday season, U.S. consumer confidence slumps from ABC News. A closely watched gauge of U.S. consumer confidence tumbled in December as rising coronavirus cases dragged American optimism to its lowest level since the summer. A town in Minnesota has approved a permit for a whites-only church. Sounds like a riot. The mayor says the town couldn't afford a legal battle there. Southern Poverty Law Center labels this church, I'm not going to say the name, to be a hate group, and says they're reviving their pre-Christian Nordic folk beliefs, and it'll not admit people who are not of Northern European descent. What if you're of Southern European descent? Can you get in? No, you can't. All right. And you want more on that, go to the Duluth News Tribune, who is reporting that out. It's great. Sounds like a real fun church. And NASA trying to give President Trump and Bill Barr a run for their money on execution when we just found out, due to an investigation by an animal rights group called Rise for Animals, that NASA killed all of its retired astronaut monkeys in one day. 27 primates were held at a California research center, and according to documents obtained by this group, all 27 monkeys held by NASA were euthanized on February 2nd last year. None of these monkeys had actually been to space, and records state that a group of 21 aging monkeys with Parkinson's disease had never been used for studies, and they were euthanized, along with a group of 6 monkeys that had been used for studies in many years, and they were developing health problems due to old age. So that's a weird and awful story. Poor monkeys. And finally, here's a strange but happy story coming out of Thailand, where an off-duty rescue worker saved a baby elephant and revived it by giving it CPR for 10 minutes. 26-year veteran paramedic performed CPR, according to the BBC, on this baby elephant that had been hit by a motorcycle as it crossed the road with a group of wild elephants, including its mother. So that's a good story to end the news dump on, huh? There you go. That is today's news dump. You want to join me? Let me know and send your stories to standupwithpete@gmail.com. All right. My first guest today is one of your all-time favorites. He's a Georgetown-educated lawyer. He is a veteran stand-up comedian who I have known since he began as a comedian. He's a prolific writer, one of the funniest and smartest people I've ever met in my life, one of the most underrated talents in all of comedy, up until his Trump impression exploded during the quarantine. And he has done so well doing cameos of Donald Trump. You should hire him. You should also listen to both of his podcasts. You should follow him on Twitter and subscribe to his YouTube page. He's J.L. Cauvin. We started our conversation talking about how charitable he's been this year. And we moved into a whole bunch of other issues. I always love it when he joins me. And here is our conversation. J.L. Cauvin is like one of the most popular guests because he always hits home runs. Same thing with all of his Trump videos. It's been a hell of a year for you, buddy. Thank you for joining me.
A pleasure to be here, as always, on a crisp winter evening.
You said I could say this. You said I could say this on the air. We were talking about charity. You've made a lot of money this year, according to you, and you've given a lot of money away, according
to mankind.
Right,
I've
according
made a lot
to
of money this year.
By any standard, by Epstein standards, you've made a lot of money this year. You just spend it differently than him. You're differently than Jeffrey Epstein, is what I'm trying to say. But you also, I know, and I asked permission, you just gave...
Right, he taught at the Ivy prep schools in New York. I attended the Ivy prep schools in New York. That's really the only difference.
Your island is different. It operates differently as well. But I'm partnering with this awesome organization, GiveWell.org/standup, everybody. And you donated $1,000. And I was blown away. But as you said, you've had a great year. And who else are you giving to? And what's this all about? What is your relationship with charity?
Yeah, it's
to reduce your taxable income. Is that the only reason?
No, it really isn't. Although that is something. I mean, I'm not going to lie, that it pops into your head. But
of course,
no, the reason I'm doing it is it's the same reason I think I when I dropped Facebook. I think I've said this on your show before. When I dumped Facebook, my career was at a low point. And I felt like, well, if my career isn't going well, maybe I can try to improve myself as a person. We'll worry about and so I was like, let me shed some of the things. I stopped using Amazon. I deleted my Facebook account, just thinking I need something to make myself feel better and feel like I'm contributing in some positive way or not contributing in some minute negative way because I'm feeling like my dreams aren't happening. And I think what happened this year is I have made a lot of money. Cameo being the biggest single source of money. I have been like, no joke, like I would guess that I'm the most successful person of 2020 on Cameo that isn't a real star, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like not an actor, athlete, celebrity who's like been making tons of money on it. But it's been, and I've made a lot of money from some gigs and some Silicon Valley contributions. But the point is the charity. I made all this money and I have a day job that pays me well too. And I thought, I got to do something with this. And I think what happened was I've gotten numb to this year because there's nothing new happening for me. And I'm being very cynical about my own charitable givings, but I'm trying to sort of give an honest psychological appraisal. I feel like I'd like to get to that next phase of my career now, gigs. Writing scripts, doing something, getting, I've gained some notoriety, but I feel like I'm on cruise control this year. I'm making good money. It's month after month is sort of the same though. I don't know what to buy myself. I don't really know what to get family for Christmas. I already have picked out some gifts for some people, big gifts, but I said, what can I do? And I said, charity. So it started on Giving Tuesday. I've been giving $300 a month to the World Food Program for a while because their work is truly inspiring. And then look at that. They got the JL bump. They won the Nobel Peace Prize this year. But I've been giving since 2017 when I saw a story about them on 60 Minutes. That's only $100 a month, but it was really out of, there's two things. I admire people with incredible courage who do things that I don't feel like I have the guts to do. It's why I've become fascinated with astronauts. Like, all that shit. I've become like, my deceased uncle, like just fascinated, like an old white guy, I feel like, with like, the astronaut's amazing. But I don't like flying. So the idea of going to like the moon in a Winnebago in 1969 is like stunning courage to me. So I've been watching all and reading all sorts of astronaut stuff.
Do you have less respect for today's astronauts because the technology is more advanced?
No. Not, right. No. Not, it's more like I have extra respect for the other ones, but in a weird way of saying not less. It's not to diminish, and the other thing was the World Food Program. These people going to legitimately war-torn, frightening places where all the Earth's worst problems, like the segment was on South Sudan. And it was just like famine, rape for like rape as a tool of war, famine, or rape, murder, tyranny.
You've met the rape requirement for this episode. Go ahead.
Yeah. And as they said in Blazing Saddles, I like rape. And then these random just people, volunteers and people who work for them are going bearing food and medicine. And I was like, that is crazy in a good way. Yeah. Like that is, I know you're not a religious guy, but that is, you talk about Christ-like, you talk about Christian, regardless of religion, you talk about sort of Christian charity and sacrifice. So I started giving there, but this year I got a shit ton of money coming my way. And of course I'd like to save it. Of course, in a year or two, I'd like to buy a place to live. But honestly, a few days ago, I gave $5,000 to Hope for Haiti.
Wow.
I was just looking for another charity to give. Dude. And I just made, and I'm only saying this is to put in perspective what people do with their money.
Yep.
I have made $6,000 this week so far on Cameo. So am I really I can't get, I can obviously give it away faster than I can make it. But in terms of like, I'm a guy who's given like $1,200 to charity a year for the last like 6 years. And this year I'm probably going to be around $20,000 because I'm just like, it's a horrible year for the world. And this is like the only thing I brag about. I don't like to brag about what I've actually made.
Asked you about it. I asked you if you would talk about it, to be clear. I did.
But I gave my uncle passed away this year from leukemia. So I gave $2,000 to like the Leukemia Society. I think I told you this, $1,000 to ALS because that disease just terrifies me. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what, well, of course, let me like, you called it, I think you might have called it like karma giving or whatever, but I was just like, I can't imagine that disease is such a nightmare. Yeah. Just learning about it. I gave another $1,000 to World Food Program. It feels, like in Schindler's List when he's holding his watch at the end and he says, I could have given more. Like, what if I'd given this? Yeah. What I'm saying is I feel like a better, more important version of Oskar Schindler.
Yeah, I was going to say, you really remind me of Oskar Schindler with all of your giving.
Liam Neeson, very tall, big dude. Yeah. You're my Ben Kingsley standing next to me telling me that I'm doing good work.
I am flattered by the comparison. I think it's great, pal.
But how do you not, like, it's one of those things where you start to just say, I'm not pinning this on anything, but I'm a church going guy and I try my best to like, when I can to live out some of those values. And, of course, Mackenzie Bezos or whatever her maiden name is, she's got to one up me with her $4 billion in a week.
She's the only one who could one up you as a percentage to your income. But I mean, a lot of people could easily look at it and say, I'm not going to have as good a year next year, no matter what they're doing, or I'm worried I might not. And so let me just sock this away. And that would be a more fiscally conservative or arguably more responsible thing to do. But, that's
I got to say,
not what you're doing.
I don't want to say I'm getting high off of it, but there's a bizarre retail therapy.
Oh, great.
To this giving, which is everybody wins.
Yeah.
But I really feel like it's something good. Like it feels like, yes. And it feels both a sense of obligation, but not an obligation like somebody's making me do it, but like, this is what comes. If I've had a good year and a lot of people are having shitty years. Oh, I gave like 1,000 to the 2 different food banks in New Jersey. I gave 1,000 to the Feeding America and to the New York City Food Bank. Cause I was just like, I felt like, except I've never been Scrooge, but it felt like that morning after. I don't know why, but I think I needed to feel something different. And I was just like, what? I'm not doing anything with this money. I'm not like, it's just sitting here.
But you could at some point. Listen, I think the way you're explaining it is great. And I love that you're doing it. And I'm psyched for your success. And for all of those nonprofits, I hope that you continue to have that success for them, not for you.
I'll keep giving them that shit. Like, cause to me, it's like, I said to my girlfriend, I said, I don't know. This may be the greatest year of my life financially. I don't know. It might be. I don't know what the future holds. I hope it's not. And I hope it's not because I need the money, but I hope it's not because I want my career to go to bigger places. Right. And with that will come money, presumably. But I said to her, I was like, if I made $1 million in a year, how the hell can I not give 100,000 or 200,000 of that away?
Very easily you cannot. And most people don't. But it's most people don't. I would say most people don't. Maybe I'm wrong about the data on that. But I mean, and thank you again for, GiveWell, because you can give to a lot of different places, but I got to plug them again. They do a lot of research, so your dollar is going.
Right. Well, and I trusted you, and I thought, let me, like, what? I mean, and I read, and it was like, it was very, on the GiveWell site, it was much more, it wasn't what I expected. I didn't know what it would be, but it was like these charities I'd not really heard of, but it was like malaria nets. And
they spend more of their money on actually treating diseases rather than advertising their themselves. Marketing isn't every nonprofit's best quality. Are most of hire JL on Cameo, are most of the cameos, which if people don't know, I'll let you explain it real quick, but is it usually you doing Trump? How much is it ever anything but Trump that you get hired to do?
Yes, I have gotten a few. It's 99% Trump. And for those that don't explain, Cameo is like the perfect thing to fall into my lap. I told my girlfriend, I'm like, I'm not doing Cameo. I'm a comedian. I'm not some sellout. And I started doing them, and the money was like insane. And the good thing about it was, since I got famous doing cell phone videos, Cameo was literally like people could get exactly what they knew me from.
That's perfect.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like Michael Irvin is not going to catch a touchdown for you on Cameo. He's just going to speak to you. Smokey Robinson is going to speak to you. He's not going to sing. I'm going to do the impression in the format in which you discovered me. So it's like a 1-to-1 ratio of like exactly what you know. So most of them have been Trump, and I really go all out. I said this in an article that was written about me, but I was like, I'm not famous. I feel like I can't just get on there and go, hey guys, JL, happy birthday from Tim and Luke. I give them 5-minute ad-libbed videos with their person's information that I really weave these Trumpian stories. I have gotten a couple of Mike Pence requests.
Oh, really?
A couple of Andrew Cuomo requests. And my favorite one, a guy from college over Thanksgiving weekend requested, I did a web series a few years ago and I did a video this summer with Trump and John Bernthal. He's the guy who played the Punisher Marvel series, and he was in
he's great.
The Walking Dead. So I do a pretty good impression of him. I do a very good impression of him. And the guy wrote to me on Cameo. He goes, me and my buddies went to high school with John Bernthal. He was like an asshole or like the worst guy. Can you do an impression of him talking to me and my friends?
So you worked on the impression?
Well, I'd already done it. I'd already done like a web series as him. And I'd done
forgive me. I didn't hear you say
that. Oh, yeah. This summer I did a video as Trump talking to the Punisher. And people now are starting to see more of my videos. I'm actually, just to get people to realize this, on New Year's Eve, I plan on posting like a JL year in review, like 2-minute video, which is going to be like 5 seconds of every impression I've done this year so that people can see, oh, wow, I forgot Kavanaugh, JB Smoove, The Rock, Pence, McConnell. My Mitch McConnell has been blowing up now, which is cool. So,
can we hear him? Get a little Mitch.
Some of it's in the face. Because I do you can see it right now, but I do this face at the end of it. I wear my glasses and I do this like triple chin face where I just go,
oh my God.
Yeah, you see
you
that?
Have to see it. I'll share this part of the video. Give it to me.
Oh God.
Give it to me.
Where are my glasses?
Are you going to wear that? Are you going to keep that hat on?
No, he's not a Utah Jazz fan.
He's a Utah Jazz. Oh, your hair is really messed up except for the part where it didn't move at all.
Well, I'm growing it out. This is what I do for art. No joke. I'm going to grow it out for a few months so I can do my Malcolm Gladwell impression. True story.
He's serious. All right, give me Mitch McConnell.
So we passed a $900 billion stimulus for the American people. And the one stipulation I had for the agreement was that to heal the suffering of all the Americans, in order for them to get the $900 billion, I get to watch them suffer.
I get to watch them suffer. It's so great. Oh, that's great, dude. Oh, that's very, very funny. I'm so excited and proud of you for doing so well. And Cameo is a really interesting app. I'm on there. You have to be invited to be on there. And but your fee is like $150. Mine is like I think $20 or $15. So several people tried to hire me this year, but I'm uncomfortable with someone, especially people who are subscribers. So a couple of people who are subscribers said try to hire me on Cameo, and I just went around it. And I emailed them. I was like, just let me Zoom with your husband or your wife. And I talked to them for like an hour and a half. And they're already paying subscribers to the podcast. And to me, it's like, I can't do what you're doing, like doing this hilarious impression that's tailored and to strangers. It's like these people that are hiring me have known me forever. I'm like, just call me. It's $20. Just call me. You're already paying. Just give me a call.
No, and I had a couple people from college contact me.
So if you're paying subscriber, don't reach out. And you want me to call your husband or wife or your friend, just call me. I'm not JL Cauvin.
That's right. No, it's I've had a few people, and then that just raises the pressure on like the best. I've gotten a few though that were very interesting. The most interesting one was for somebody requested one for Ron Klain.
Oh, the Joe Biden's.
To congratulate him. It was like specific. A high-level person requested a Trump cameo for Ron Klain, which was very cool.
Oh, it was going to be for him.
Yeah, like in other words, here's Trump congratulating you on becoming chief of staff.
Oh, you did it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's great, dude. I love it.
My favorite experience, though, was one day I did back-to-back. This is not a joke. Back-to-back for an escort service. That like the ad, how there's legal stipulations to it, but it was like, we are an ad hosting site for escorts. Like, in other words, they're not pimps or whatever, but it's all legalese. Basically, their digital pimp was like, if you could just tell them, we're thinking of them and you'll be back to work soon, but like, thanks for socially distancing during the COVID. And then the next message was a father wanting Trump to congratulate his 8-year-old daughter for riding her bike without training wheels.
Oh my God.
This was when I was like 50 a pop.
That is quite a juxtaposition.
Right.
So let me ask you before I let you go, and I really appreciate you talking to me as always, buddy. Everybody loves when you're on. What your thoughts are for this, the remainder of Trump's reign in office, because it's getting every day. It's getting crazier and crazier. And now his own people, like closest to him, his top lawyer and his chief of staff, who are both crazy sycophants. His kids are like, Trump's kids are like, just like Jared's in Israel, Ivanka, like staying away from him, it would seem. And his own people are saying you can't do that. And so he has to bring in people from outside, like this Sidney Powell and Michael Flynn, to fill his brain, to tell him whatever he wants to hear. I'm not that concerned about it because I don't think anybody's going to carry out any bad order, but it's still terribly, terribly damaging every day, every hour that he denies the election. But what did we expect? What are your concerns? What do you think about this insanity that's unfolding every day that we won't get a rest from during Christmas, no doubt?
Yeah, I had no idea that Sidney Powell was going to be like a late entry into my favorite member of the Trump orbit. Like really 11th hour sudden nominee. There is a coalition of the evil, the stupid, and the mentally ill. And I mean those terms not as jokes, that is forming the Trump movement. They allowed Frankenstein to go unchecked for too long. He still wields the power of the office. He's going to probably pardon many, many criminals on his way out.
That's a good point. And execute others.
Well, I was saying, I'm an anti-death penalty person, obviously.
How noble of you.
I genuinely think there's part of him that is actually like getting off on these executions. Like, he needs vengeance. No, I'm not even joking, like jerking off. I mean, I think he is somebody who is like the way, like the leader he most reminds me of is Commodus in Gladiator, played by Joaquin Phoenix. Like, insecure, so desperate to flex his power, less accomplished than his father in many ways. Like, Fred Trump was obviously a piece of shit, but actually built the business. Like,
ruthlessly.
There are objective qualities that you can say, well, he did this. Trump, you did not. Donald, you did not.
Right.
Like, you are a complete mirage. But what makes me scared about this is that Trump, as many of your guests have said, is basically trying to engineer a coup. He has enough support for it to be like something that people care about and like almost consider a viable option. And I don't even know what I think anymore. I keep looking at him going, we're done. I feel like we're done as a country. And I don't mean like apocalyptic. Oh, we're going to be in this, a total third world country soon. But it feels like we're sort of done. And maybe in these times, countries don't look at England. They're no longer the superpower. They're fine. Yep. But are we in that place? Are we in that place where we have been shown so lacking in character as a country? And I hate it when people say to me, like, actually, Trump lost both times the popular vote, like trying to say like we're better than that. And I go, well, the DNA of our system allowed him to win in 2016. The bones of this country with electoral college, which is not being gotten rid of anytime soon. Right. I don't think there's a mechanism to get rid of it. We won't have enough states. The founders, as genius as they were in many ways, they did not envision this country developing this way, that there would be a state of California with 40 million people and a state of Wyoming with 9 people.
Right. There is that organization, that movement, I'm trying to look it up, the Popular Vote Movement, and there's 20 states that have signed on to it, and that would create how does it work?
In other words, once there's enough states with 270 electoral votes, it will automatically
Popular Vote interstate compact is what I'm talking about.
And not to go Eric Siegel on you, but I just have a feeling that there will be some conservative Federalist Society constitutional argument against that, that a Trump Supreme Court 10 years from now will invalidate that pact.
It's a good question for constitutional scholars. Yeah, but you're a Georgetown
Eric Siegel.
Well, you're a Georgetown educated lawyer. I'd take your opinion over most.
I am very nervous. No joke it doesn't really matter to me. I've never been one of those American exceptionalism. We're the best country in the world. And I think that comes from I had a father who was foreign born and always kind of laughed at that notion. But at the same time, you don't want the country to become, how much good the country is capable of. And under this kind of system, it seems like we're capable of unlimited harm, but it feels almost like we're now capped on how much good we can do because you see the makeup of this country. I mean, Donald Trump is, I said to somebody, I didn't want to tweet this, but I said, Donald Trump is the most impactful president, I think, since FDR. And he's probably the most impactful Republican president of this century, the same way Osama bin Laden was the most impactful real estate developer of this century. Like, yes, but not in a good way.
Right. No doubt about it. And it's interesting because someone might hear you say that and be like, FDR passed this legislation, he did this and he did that. And there's concrete actual policies and things that happen. But in Trump's case, he appointed a number of judges, but when you look at his accomplishments or what he built or what he broke, other than a tax cut and judges, it's not a lot. But I agree with you because it's what he's created. It's how he's affected people. And basically, I guess the best way of saying it is he's given people real permission to be racist again, and he's harmed our democracy and our faith in what was left of government and our faith in what was left of our elections.
We put a man with no honor in charge of a system that operates in many ways on the honor system. And he exposed that as like a big bag of bullshit. You know, like in Troy, in the movie Troy, which I've only seen once, but I do remember the scene. I like
that movie a lot.
Somebody says something about you've disgraced the gods or something like, and he just chops the head off of like a statue as if to say, let them do something. Like, I'll expose them as like, what are you going to do? And that's what Trump basically did to the honor system and norms and traditions. He said, well, if you can't put me in jail for it, let's see what happens. I dare you to do something. And I think in an essay, there's this book that's come out now that I'll be promoting at some point. But one of the essays is from me, really sort of spoken to the author. But the thing he liked, the quote I said in that was, I said, removing Trump is like removing a tumor, but the cancer has spread already in a real substantial way. So we need political and cultural chemotherapy at this point. And who's going to do that?
Joe Biden.
Well, it won't be Dr. Jill Biden because she's not that kind of doctor.
Ugh.
So I love that.
I ignored every part of that story.
We had a Christmas hating prostitute in the White House for 4 years, and all they said was how elegant and classy she was. And now we want to nitpick on Jill Biden's degree. Like how quickly the standards
We're not
shifted.
talking about it here.
No,
it was so like Dr. Seb Gorka. What else needs to be done? What else do we have to say?
I think Trump was a tumor, but the cancer, he was a accelerant to a cancer in our society. And it really is disturbing. Like, it feels now much like things like ideas like white supremacy and racism. When I see them talking about Raphael Warnock, the way they talk about him, and this is another joke that I wrote on Twitter.
Good.
I said, Republicans for the last 40 years. Well, if you would just be like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, we all agree in his lessons. We all agree that Dr. Martin Luther King, when he said equality and judge a man not by the skin color, but the content, Dr. Martin Luther King said, and then my thing was like, hey, look, guys, next best thing. We're running the guy running Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King's church. Fuck you, socialist Democrat.
Yeah.
It's literally like, I mean, the Georgia race is such a good, you know what the Georgia race is? It's the first checkup along my analogy of tumor versus cancer. It's the first checkup with the doctor after we remove the tumor. And I think the results are going to be like, this is still an aggressive right-wing cancer that is, you are running a nice guy named John Ossoff and the Reverend of Martin Luther King's church, both kind of nice speaking, compassionate guys who have a progressive policy, but aren't quote unquote radical. And they are going up against two fucking crooks, and like crooks of the worst kind. They didn't jaywalk. They didn't deal drugs. They're profiting off of your death.
I think
and
that
Kelly
is
Loeffler is basically an uncharismatic Ann Coulter. Like, who wants that?
I think that is such an important point that I'm not hearing. I listened to ABC News's their Sunday show, This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Whatever, and he had like
wow. Okay, David Perdue talking about Kamala Harris.
Mine's less racist, but still it is. I was anti-Greek, but
Greeks are almost a different species with how hairy they are.
On that,
so
that's not
some
wrong.
Sensitivity.
They're like Sicilians. On that panel was like a Republican strategist who was playing the traditional role on a network news station, in a political conversation, and talking about and supporting the two Republicans. And I was thinking to myself, JL, I was like, any other political race anywhere, that kind of insider trading would end the campaign, and every person who's a part of that party would have to say, this is a disgrace. This man has done a horrible thing. He cannot represent the party, the state, what he has done. What they did what is proven that they've done, I think, and they're in a lot of trouble for it. What kind of legal issue are they having with their insider trading? But they fucking made money off of COVID, basically. Both of them.
I would argue with the
intelligence they got as U.S. senators, they then made trades. It is
while cheerleading the downplaying of COVID. Like that's the other thing. If they were out there going, wear your fucking masks,
be different,
people, it would be different. That's the difference. It's almost like
be insider trading,
but it's almost like gambling on yourself as a player and gambling on the other team.
Yeah.
One way you can make a moral argument like, hey, yes, I'm trying to make money, but I'm trying to do the right thing also. The other way is like, 500 on my citizens dying, please.
Pete Rose still can't get in the Hall of Fame, but David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler could potentially be U.S. senators.
Get in the Hall of Fame. Unbelievable that Loeffler's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I can't believe that.
Did I say that?
No, it's a disgrace, and it's so sad that, and Bill Maher asks this question a lot. He'll often say, why is the Democratic brand so toxic? And my theory on this is, if you support Donald Trump, if you are of the mind that Donald Trump is not only somebody, I'm not talking about the people that hold their nose and vote for Trump because policy wise, I'm talking about his tens of millions of enthusiastic supporters. If that's your position, then you have to believe that Democrats are pedophile, baby blood drinking monsters because you're supporting somebody who by every objective measure is a horrific human being. So you have to believe in some sort of Pan's Labyrinth world where Democrats are like monsters, literally, because you are literally cheering and high-fiving for one of the worst people in American history. So the only way to like rationalize is like, no, he's, they view him, I think, that, to bring up Banshee, which I think we were talking about before we recorded. It's almost like Trump is their cool, badass anti-hero. Like in a world of villains and monsters, you need a kick-ass motherfucker to take down the Democrats. So they're okay. Everything he does, every rude thing he says is part of the branding of him as this badass anti-hero. But in reality, he's a piece of shit, and you're refusing to vote for John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock because you're a fucking dumb sack of shit. That's all there is to it. Sorry to break it to you, but there's no global struggle with a pedophile cabal. You're just a fucking idiot or a bad person or both. And that's why you're voting for David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, who will gladly piss on your graves, you redneck trash, you business-making scumbags in Georgia, who put profits and false Christianity over the good of man.
JL Cauvin, everybody. All right, isn't he great? Always great, in my opinion, and always love to hear from you about who you like and who you don't hear on the show, but most folks love him. He is on Twitter at JL Cauvin. He's got 2 podcasts. He's got a YouTube page. Subscribe to it. Hire him. And now it's time to move on to guest number 2. So how do I set this up? I think it's really important that we watch what is happening in alternative media, independent media, podcasts, and YouTubes, and who's doing what and how are they influencing folks' minds and thoughts and opinions on really important issues. My style has always been to reach out to the experts on these issues and interview them and ask them questions, but you should always be thinking for yourself, pushing back on anything that I say that you disagree with, that you think I should correct. Look it up. I got an interesting email from a guy yesterday based on my conversation with Jared Yates Sexton about business and patriotism and capitalism. Really thoughtful email. So always send me your thoughts on anything. But watching what's happening right now in left-wing media, specifically over on YouTube and with podcasts specifically, is really important, I think, and very interesting. Old friend of mine, comedian who I came up with, used to open for, gave opportunities back to when I had the opportunity when I was at SiriusXM for him to host my radio show, be a guest on my show, and even gave him a shot, helped him get a shot at hosting his own show at SiriusXM. He went on to the Young Turks and then became his own entity with his own YouTube channel where he is making a lot of money and getting really fired up. And he attacked Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on his YouTube channel the other day, and a lot of people were supporting him, and obviously a lot of people were outraged, as I was, and as I think my guest Eric Levitz wrote a really important piece about what Jimmy Dore is doing, specifically as it pertains to demanding that the House take a floor vote on Medicare for all. It's complicated, but it's really important, and it involves media and policy and the progressive movement, and I think that this is a super important issue. Here now is Jimmy Dore and what he said about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And I think for the audience of this show, trigger warning, because the way he says it is so caustic and invective, and I feel threatening. And I'm really upset about it because I've known Jimmy a long time. I really just think this road he's going down is real unhelpful and dangerous and also unrealistic.
You're broken because you're corrupted and co-opted. And now we got to lay on you as hard as we can. Everybody sees through you. Everybody sees through you. You don't think people see you? You don't think people see what you're doing? You don't think everyone knows that you got your start on my show?
All right, so there's Jimmy Dore from his show on YouTube, and that stirred up a lot of trouble. And my next guest is here to explain all of it and why it matters. I think it's, like I said, really important, and this is a great piece that he has at New York Magazine, where he is a senior writer at the Intelligencer blog. He's on Twitter at Eric Levitz, and it's got a lot of attention yesterday, titled "The Left's Most Naive Cynics Have Turned on AOC." Left-wing media personalities are calling on House progressives to force a floor vote on Medicare for all or reveal themselves to be frauds. Here's my conversation with Eric Levitz from New York Magazine about his very popular article on all of this. All right, Eric joins me now. Eric Levitz, welcome to Stand Up. Great to have you on. First time ever. I've been reading you for a long time. I really respect your work. You're a really smart guy. You do thorough research, and you're a great writer. Those are my opening compliments, sir.
Yeah, well, thanks. You've got a lovely shed.
Thank you very much for returning. Yeah, thank you. I love it out here. It's a great work-life balance. So I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about your work at New York Magazine. I love the Intelligencer. Can you tell people that aren't familiar with it or aren't subscribers exactly the kind of content that you guys put out every week?
Yeah, sure. Well, we're a daily political blog. So basically we have our stable of like original reporters, but the emphasis in terms of our daily content is on commentary and analysis, at least, and that's really the role that I primarily play. So we basically try to give our readers a real sense of what's going on in Washington, in U.S. politics, and then also maybe not just in terms of the day-to-day, but also on the broader sort of historical level or on the ideological level, what ideas and trends are remaking U.S. politics. So we try to do it in, a lively, somewhat amusing way if we can.
Well, I'm a big fan of it and have been for a really long time, and I'm excited to be talking to you. I wanted to obviously talk about this article that I've mentioned to folks and obviously that you've just posted about the current situation in the House and the movement to get a Medicare for all vote on the House floor. I want to talk about that because I think it's a really important issue. But before we get into all of it, and I've set up a little bit of the controversy, just so I understand, and I can't figure, it sounds like a dumb question, but even if the House were to pass a piece of legislation, say Medicare for all, it would still have to go to the Senate, and the Senate would still have to pass it, and the president would still have to sign it, right? I mean, I'm not missing anything. I feel like no one's really talking about that boring part of it. Yeah,
that's correct. So, I think that there's a few different arguments being tossed out by people who are supporting the force the vote idea. A decent number of people are saying we know that this can't be made into law, but the point is to get everybody on the record, like which Democrats really support the policy and which do not. Among those who think that it is actually possible to pass, if I was trying to, charitably characterize their vision for how this happens, if Democrats win both Senate runoff elections in Georgia in January, they will have a functional majority of 50 votes plus the vice president's vote in Kamala Harris. In which case, theoretically, if they wanted to, if all 50 wanted to, if Joe Manchin wanted to, they could vote to abolish the legislative filibuster and then vote to nationalize the private health insurance industry. So for various reasons, I think that's not a plausible scenario. But that is, I guess, the most plausible way that I could draw it up.
So you've looked at all of the arguments, and I think, as you said, charitably, all of them. I thought you were arguably too charitable to some of these people, but I thought your criticisms were really right on. But I appreciate that you present them in this article, because I think this is a very, you were kind of on Twitter downplaying how much time you spent on this, and I think mostly as it pertains to comedian Jimmy Dore and what he said. But I actually think this is one of the most important articles and issues of the year, of the current state, because I happen to think that a lot of these YouTube people and podcasters and others have a tremendous amount of influence now, the way the right always has, I think, to some extent. And I think it's worth discussing. But you explain the different points of views on this. And to me, it just sounds like what the Republicans did with Obamacare. They repealed it like 100 times just to make a political point. But it never went anywhere. Even when they got the majorities, they still didn't repeal it. Isn't this the same thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something to that. I think that in the case of the Republicans, they did actually have the votes, in Congress to pass Obamacare repeal.
Important,
right? When they were firing with blanks, and that's another aspect of the situation right now. And the argument that's currently being made is that, as I just referenced, I think maybe the dominant argument is that, of course, we know that the Democratic Party is, moderate Democrats and Republicans are too, corrupt to actually pass Medicare for all. But the point of this is to highlight that fact to Democratic primary voters and to heighten the contradictions between the Democratic lawmakers and their base. And the flaw with that is that just like when the Republican House voted to repeal Obamacare under Obama, you're not going to be, the idea is that basically that there are lawmakers in the House right now, Democrats, who have co-sponsored legislation to establish single-payer health care, but who deep down don't actually support it if you actually put them in a situation where they had the power to take on the private insurance industry in that way. And so forcing this vote is going to make them expose themselves to their base. And the problem is, as you referenced before, that it doesn't even make sense in its own terms, because those lawmakers have every reason to believe that there's not enough votes in the House, even if every co-sponsor backs it. And even if there was enough votes in the House, there wouldn't be enough votes in the Senate. And so this doesn't even work to expose people. People can still take a meaningless vote and pretend to support the policy when they secretly oppose it, if that's your premise. So, yeah, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in a somewhat similar way, I guess, to these previous votes under Republicans.
And the most important point, though, is that the Republicans actually did do it when they were shooting blanks. I like that. But they had the votes. In this case, you're saying even if there was a floor vote for Medicare for all, there aren't enough Democrats for it to pass the House.
Yeah, I mean,
by anybody's analysis, pretty much.
Yeah, there's some people who think that if we force the vote, have this national debate, leverage Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's unique gifts for commandeering media attention, that we'll be able to, in the context of a COVID crisis, that we're going to be able to just change public opinion, massively change political reality, and maybe cow these Democrats into supporting it. But no one denies that as of this moment, there aren't nearly enough votes to even get it out of the House.
The other great thing about this article in New York Magazine by Eric Levitz is that you have a thorough analysis of both the polling on where people stand on Medicare for all or other healthcare policies, as well as, what might be wrong with even that. And I think that's also really important. This is not a debate about guns. It's not a debate about capital punishment or abortion. I would argue those are simpler debates or issues for people to understand. This is health policy. It's health insurance. It's health care. There's so many different competing interests. And you, as you do in this article, you explain how when the polling questions are asked, why certain outcomes are gotten. The point is, my question to you is, do people really know that much about healthcare and what they want, even if this was put on the floor? Do anybody know what it means? It's so easy to demagogue anyway.
Yeah, so there's a few different things going on with public opinion in the U.S. on healthcare. One is that where progressives are right that we're strong is that the moral premise that healthcare should be a right and that the federal government has a responsibility to ensure that everybody has access to healthcare, whether they're rich or poor. Large majority of Americans, you say, is that the case? They say, yeah, of course. People shouldn't die from preventable illnesses because they weren't born to affluent family or they had some hard times in their lives.
And that's a good place to start. Is the healthcare right question? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, there's that. There's also the case that if you ask people, do you support Medicare for all or do you support giving Medicare to all Americans, a majority will say yes to that. And when you explain in further detail, would you support a national health care plan, some call it Medicare for all, in which all Americans enroll in the same single government plan, that also has majority support, though usually slightly lower. It's usually sort of a bare majority. But polling from the Kaiser Family Foundation, one of the most prominent pollers of these sorts of questions in the U.S., has found that in that poll, the last poll I just described, the detailed one that said, do you support enrolling everybody in a single government plan, that a majority of people who say yes to that, when you then ask them, so under that single government plan, would you be able to keep the insurance that you currently have? A majority says that yes, that they think that they would. And separate polling finds that when you poll Medicare for all versus Medicare for all who want it, in other words, single payer versus, should everyone enroll in Medicare, or should it be an option for people to enroll in a public health insurance option if they would like it, the option tends to poll better. We can talk about, there's all different sort of, critiques you can make of how these polls frame the choice and, what relevant pieces of information people are and are not being given. But it is the case that, with the polling data that we have, it suggests that people are not, when you see that a majority of voters support Medicare for all, it isn't the case that majority necessarily supports Medicare for all over building on the ACA or over a public option. And thus it's not really very clear that, if you expose the fact and made people more aware of the fact that their moderate Democratic congressperson doesn't support Medicare for all, that would necessarily hurt them, because there is ambiguity and ambivalence in how voters currently think about these things. Yeah.
And it's so easy to simply, no matter what outcome, thoughtful policy that is worked out, any interest will come up with something about rationing or throwing grandma off a cliff, or you'll lose your doctor, or you'll have to wait in line. And so I think experienced negotiators and policy experts have followed the politics and the communication on this and also have that to consider. And you've been following this debate and covering it for a long time. And so you also understand that. But I feel like part of your analysis in this piece is also looking at how, all these people on YouTube and podcasters and left-wing activists just simply, they don't understand how things work. They don't understand how governing works. They don't understand the overall concerns of what a congressman or congresswoman has to take into consideration when they cast a vote, when they do anything. And if you don't have the House majority, you can't get anything done. And the damage that gets done in the meantime by right-wing conservatives, it's not worth the fight. Could you just explain, because you have some great, the way that you write about it, and this is fantastic, but how these YouTubers and podcasters, they don't have any consequences. They don't have any constituents that they have to be responsible for. They just got to get new subscribers on YouTube and sell ads. And now my buddy Jimmy Dore has bought like $1 million home. What do they not understand, Eric?
Yeah, so I will say that I think that you're totally, I broadly agree with what you just said. I do think, I don't want to say that, only members of Congress are fit to judge the actions of members of Congress. And that I do think, and as I say in the piece, I think that the last time the Democrats had full control of the federal government, they made a lot of mistakes and they did a lot of policy issues on which their loud left-wing critics were correct and the experts in charge were not. And so I think this did create some level of distrust that is part of why there is this current ecosystem. That said, I think you are 100% right that there is one big problem facing the American left today is that its institutional strength is very much weighted towards media. In other words, where the left has managed to increase its cultural influence and political influence has really been through the emergence of alternative media through social media and through YouTube and new periodicals, and then through a figure like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is a master of social media and is able to engineer a lot of engagement, which is great and helpful. But the level of strength within the progressive movement that's in media versus in trade unions versus in churches versus in community organizations that represent a mass constituency or an interest group that has a lot on the line in terms of, okay, like our incentives are to figure out what is the best way that we can move the ball in order to get more dollars in the pockets or whatever it is to our constituents, to our people. Yeah. That's the incentive for those actors. In media, your incentives are very different, right? In media, incentives are going to be around engagement and narrative. And that selects for media spectacle, for heightening the contradictions, for public conflict over other forms of trying to win influence, right? It's not as interesting to talk about or entertaining or to strategize in fine detail. Okay, what rule changes and how committee assignments are made will maximize the influence of our people over the next appropriations bill. Right. That's a lot less interesting than force a vote, expose the traitors, purge the party. That has more oomph.
The way that you write it in your piece is ignoring the structural obstacles to single payer's passage, the fragility of public support for the policy, and the simple fact that people can share political values while earnestly disagreeing about the best way to advance them, all for the sake of declaring Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez an enemy of America's uninsured. Yeah, that's a sound strategy for ginning up interest in your rant-based YouTube show, but it's also a recipe for converting your politically naive viewers into an anti-political cynics and making the U.S. left as self-deluded and internally divided as corporate America wishes for it to be. Dude, that last paragraph is perfect and brilliant and thoughtful and not the kind of thing that you hear on a YouTuber's show because they're just not smart enough or experienced enough or it's too many words for them. I love it.
This isn't going up on YouTube, I assume?
No, maybe someday. I may. Yeah. Once I start dominating YouTube. Yeah. No, it's a different style. I mean, what those guys are doing. So my last question to you is kind of like your best guess, your best analysis of how influential you see, because you watch media and trends and politics for a living. How influential do you see like Jimmy Dore getting? It's interesting to see like MSNBC and the way it's positioned itself as the kind of progressive corporate cable news network. Then you've got the Young Turks, much less corporate, but still a lot of money sloshing around in there, but it's more independent. The actual players. And then you got individual YouTube people. And it gets further and further to the left and further, and in my opinion, less realistic in a way, which is a lot of what your article says. So my question to you is, what is your analysis of how influential do you see the Jimmy Dores of the world and others like him becoming on the actual conversation and policies that Democrats are trying to pass? Because I've always said and thought the right-wing media is dominated and the Republican Congress members at the state and national level, and they've been literally beholden to Rush and Sean Hannity for years. The left has never had anything like that, nothing close. But now what I'm seeing is very similar. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that, for better or worse, I don't think that the analogy between the right and the left on this point holds as of yet because, among other things, the left-wing media just is not nearly as powerful as Rush Limbaugh or Fox News and Murdoch's empire. I do think that the new media left has a lot of influence among younger Democratic voters. And I think that this is one, though not necessarily the primary reason, but one reason why we saw such stark generational divides in the 2020 and 2016 primaries is that younger people, younger politically engaged people, are existing in a much different media ecosystem than older Democratic voters who are getting their information from MSNBC. I think that the bottom line is that there's structural differences in the two-party coalitions, with the Republican Party much more organized around an ideological movement, the conservative movement, and around a very homogenous base of predominantly non-urban, white, culturally traditional, whether because of evangelical Christian or just some sort of immigration restrictionist bent. It's a different coalition, whereas Democrats, it's extremely multiracial, multi-class. It's full of contradictions and differing viewpoints, and there is ideological progressives are just one faction sort of within this party that is largely a collection of interest groups with concrete demands. And that, currently limits the base's appetite for maximalist ideological demands, and limits the reach of Jimmy Dore and other new media people, because, ultimately the median Democratic voter in a primary, I believe, is something like 55 years old. I got to double check that, but there are people who are not watching that much YouTube relative to cable news and relative to other sources of information.
Well, I think you're probably right about that, but I feel like it could change real fast.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, it's influential among younger people for sure.
Yeah.
And, that they're the future. So
it's great talking to you. It's great reading you and finally connecting. I really appreciate you coming on the show to talk about this. It's a great piece. I think everybody should read it. And of course, subscribe to New York Magazine. Follow Eric on Twitter. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, J.L. Cauvin and Eric Levitz of New York Magazine. Let them know that you like them. Support my sponsor, GiveWell.org/standup. If you haven't made a donation, do it now. They're the best charity. Your dollar goes the furthest with GiveWell because they do the research on where and how to improve lives the most. GiveWell.org/standup. I hope to see you tonight at 8 at the Zoom Hangout for subscribers only, and you can always hang out with us on Discord. That chat goes 24/7 so that you're never alone if you're part of the stand-up community. That's it for today. I love you. I'll see you hopefully tonight at the Hangout, where we will be graced by the great talent of the guy singing this song. Take it away, John Carroll.
When the tyrants taunt you and the sirens tease you, better stand up. Stand up. Let the brave meet the challenge. Let the meek weak flee. Oh, you better stand up.